of traders out in India. And we're continuing to track the fallout of America's hefty new H-1B visa fees. Indian citizens account for 70% of these allotted visas, which could put a limit on outsourcing. But this could also be an opportunity for a new outsourcing model. These are called Global Capability Centers, or GCCs, offshore arms of multinational companies. According to Indian Business Trade Association, NASSCOM, India hosts more than 1,800 GCCs and employs nearly 1.9 million people. Well, we have Vikram Ahuja, who's the co-founder and managing director of Answer, to perhaps provide the answer as to whether or not this is an opportunity or a risk for the IT services industry and these new business model that has emerged out in India. Vikram, thank you so much for joining us today. Let's talk first about the H-1B visas and the possible reshoring or return of these jobs to India. In a worst-case scenario or in a grave-case scenario, how much reshoring could happen should the H-1B visa restrictions actually take effect? What are people in India and what are GCCs expecting with regards to a possible reshoring trend should this indeed come to pass?
Sure, thank you for having me. The new H-1B fee that's been added in some ways is a long pending reorganization of how labor and workforce is organized in the US. I think there's been talks about this for a while. But in many ways, many organizations are looking at this less of a tax and more of a signal towards where global workforces are headed. In some ways, if you look at what's happening around the world today, the conversation is about finding the best talent, wherever that talent might be. And many organizations have already taken significant steps to harness the power of global talent. So if you look at global capability centers today, as you mentioned, there's close to about 2,000 centers employing close to about 1.5 million professionals around the world. And the story today is about building strategic capabilities, building AI, building product, building cybersecurity frameworks, and in some ways doing work that is mission critical and core to the companies. So I think in many ways, this is going to be a significant moment in how global organizations think about doing work and who does that work.
Yeah. Vikram, let's take a step back. Can you help us understand the difference between these global capability centers? Because it seems that this is a fairly new business model, at least for India. How different is this from the traditional outsourcing outposts that India's really specialized in over the last couple of decades? And does this new business model perhaps insulate you a little bit more from a lot of the issues that have arisen over the last couple of days?
Absolutely. So global capability centers in its simplest forms is an office or an extended capability hub anywhere in the world, like any other office, but predominantly located in talent-rich areas. So think of it as a completely owned, integrated, fully strategic office that houses employees that are doing critical work for the organization. So these are employees, these are part of the company, these are folks who take ownership and accountability in building the company forward. And in many ways, it's the other side of outsourcing. It represents insourcing. And it's a way for organizations to build critical capabilities while also bringing in the level of expertise and experience that they need to move forward. Outsourcing, of course, as an industry has remained for many years. It's been close to about 3 or 4 decades and has done phenomenally well as in terms of providing service to large organizations. Global capability centers in some ways represents the new evolution of work, which is, as more and more companies become technology enabled and the desire to own IP and ownership for the end output becomes more and more critical. It's important that organizations think about building teams that can be integrated into the setup and have critical levels of accountability, right? So that's really where the industry is headed. And it is fundamentally different than outsourcing. It's insourcing. It's, organizations investing in building their own assets and capabilities. And I think that difference is well understood between the industry players today.
All right, Vikram, let's talk again. Let's go back to the issue of the H-1B visas and the possible return or re-influx of talent from overseas. How capable are the industries in India, whether it be IT services or GCCs, at absorbing this returning talent if it did come back? And I ask that also because there have been concerns about rising youth unemployment in India, and thus could put even more pressures on a job market by increasing competition or job seekers who come back. What are your thoughts on how easy or difficult it's going to be to absorb any potential returnees based on these H-1B visa restrictions?
Yeah, absolutely. So, the growth in global capability centers has been constant over the last many years. It's been growing at about 15 to 20%. Even before the recent news about H-1Bs, we'd been seeing at least between 120 to 150,000 jobs that were being created annually. And that number continues to grow. So, in some ways, this could be a huge opportunity for India to position itself as the capital for GCCs. But also, if you think about the kind of work that's coming into these global capability centers, there's an increasing demand for talent that needs to be upskilled and reskilled. If you look at what's happening with AI and everything related to AI, for example, today there's a shortage of talent around the world. So we think that there's a tremendous opportunity for the industry to absorb any sort of impact from the H-1B news, but also create net new opportunities for talent in India to stand up and really take advantage of what the world is asking for.
Vikram, I want to get your thoughts also on a possible headwind here, and that's the HIRE Act that's being proposed out in the U.S. And apparently it's not just going to target possible outsourcing. It could mean a 25% tax also on, say, companies that invest overseas or hire overseas, such as at these global capability centers. Is this the bigger concern that we're going to have to watch out for as GCCs evolve and develop out in India?
Sure. So, first and foremost, I think with global capability centers, this is not a cost play. This is a capability play. It's an opportunity for companies to really sort of rethink how work gets done and harness the best talent wherever that talent might be. So, in some degrees, it's not about cost parity here. It's about actually ensuring that you have availability of critical talent. So, while the HIRE Act in its current form does look to tax work that is being done overseas, we believe that the global capability center industry, is here to stay. I mean, there's the number of employees that are hired today by firms working for developing these critical capabilities is immense, and that's not going away. And we feel that the industry now has a story beyond just cost and labor arbitrage, and in some ways it's about talent arbitrage, as we call it, right? So I think the opportunity really is to present an even more strategic positioning for the industry and make it, an almost critical imperative as companies think about what the next 5-10 years holds for them.
All right, Vikram, let's help us perhaps understand what the cost advantages are, if there are any, between perhaps hiring out of a GCC or keeping those employees at your U.S. operations via an H-1B. Talk to us about what the possible cost differentials are between these two particular models.
Yeah, absolutely. So as with different labor markets, you've got different volumes and availability of talent, as well as different standards of costs that apply for these labor markets. So if you look around the world today, you've got multiple markets that allow organizations to create these hubs. In addition to India, you've got countries like Mexico, Vietnam, you've got Canada, as well as countries today that are emerging out of Eastern Europe. Poland, of course, is a big hotspot. And all of these markets offer different varying availability of skill pools, as well as the experience of the talent pool itself, right? So from a cost perspective, if you were to just look at salaries, for example, at the senior levels, we're seeing that, talent is being paid what it's worth. And in many ways, you have employees that are being hired that, come close to getting US salaries, even in a market like India. But again, the conversation here is not about cost. It's about how do you access the best talent for doing the best work. Talent, of course, at junior levels or at sort of, midterm levels tend to have differences in how they're paid. And that's purely a reflection of the differences in cost between different countries. And so this could be anywhere between, 20 to 50%. But again, as organizations build these centers, cost quickly goes out of the conversation as the focus comes back to, volume, quality, as well as retention of talent.
Which is why the first C is capability and not cost, I guess. Vikram, before we end, I wanted to ask you your thoughts on something that a guest we spoke to earlier this week mentioned. He said the H-1B visas aren't the biggest problem for India, actually. It's a short-term hiccup, perhaps. But really that the very business model of outsourcing and BPOs itself is under threat from technologies like AI that could disrupt it significantly. Do you agree with that sentiment? And how would a GCC, for instance, the way it functions, perhaps offset any of these possible risks to the old business models?
Yeah, absolutely. I think with AI and the evolution of the technology in its current form today, we think that it represents a huge shift in how organizations think about work. There is an opportunity today to build, very interesting hybrid work models, which combines human intelligence along with autonomous digital agents that can do a lot of the recurring manual work that humans used to do, and that's going to fundamentally rethink how we think about staffing capacity for work. So in some ways, IT services were built on the backbone of providing, human-led expertise and of course volume of talent to do work, and that gets challenged in a model like this, where you can have digital agents that can do the same work that humans did with human intervention, but of course do it at scale and almost do it 24/7, right? So there is a significant change that I think IT services companies will bring about in terms of the value they provide. Now, for GCCs, it's a different conversation because in many ways, GCCs are the enterprise. And so the way we think about work and who does the work changes as well. But again, the autonomy and control remains with the organization. So as we see newer companies being set up, early questions that are being asked is, who does the work? Should it be my employees? Should it be my outsourcing partners, or should it be an agent? And I think these are the questions today that are going to lead to the sort of hybrid workforce that's going to become almost the truth of tomorrow, right? So we're already seeing that in action, and in many ways, this is being led by the Global Capability Center.
Just very quickly, Vikram, there's concerns about this HIRE Act, which hasn't been passed yet, but is being deliberated to perhaps impact some of these investments, actually. There's more than 1,800 GCCs. Where do you see the number of GCCs growing to by the end of, say, next year?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you look at the Fortune 500, less than 30% of them have GCCs. So there's a huge headroom to grow. So we're very optimistic and ambitious about the industry as it is today. We anticipate that there will be at least a 60% increase in the number in the next 2 to 3 years. And we're adding, anywhere between 70 to 100 new GCCs every year. So it's exciting times. And we feel that the changes in global labor markets is only going to add more momentum to the industry.
All right, 60% growth in the next 2 to 3 years, and hopefully 60% more much-needed jobs for India as well, if it does come to pass and everything goes to plan. Vikram Ahuja from Answer, thank you so much for joining us today and helping us understand the new GCC model and how it might withstand some of the new pressures and uncertainties we've seen transpire over the last couple of days.